There is a simple reason you can often learn more about a person from one good question than from an hour of small talk. People tell you who they are all the time, but most of us listen only to the words and miss everything underneath them. A short answer can reveal confidence. A long answer can reveal fear. A joke can cover discomfort. A sudden change in tone can tell you that you just touched a subject that matters. This does not mean you can magically read thoughts or know exactly what another person is thinking. It means you can become much better at noticing what their words, choices, and reactions are telling you. And today, you're going to learn 5 simple ways to do that without acting strange, forcing people to talk, or turning every conversation into an investigation. The real skill is not getting people to reveal secrets. The real skill is knowing what to notice when they respond. Stay with this all the way through, because the last point can change the way you understand people you have known for years. If you are short on time, let the video play faster rather than jumping around, because each idea builds your ability to notice the next one. By the end, you may start hearing conversations in a completely different way. The first way to understand a person is to stop asking only what they think and start asking why it matters to them. Try this simple question. What do you really want from this situation? It sounds harmless, and that is exactly why it works so well. Most people are ready for questions about facts. They are not always ready for questions about motives. If you ask what happened, you usually get the story. If you ask what they want, you begin to get the meaning behind the story. Watch what happens next. A person who knows what they want may answer quickly and clearly. They might say they want peace, respect, money, freedom, a better relationship, or a fair result. That does not mean you have discovered their whole mind, but you have found a doorway into what matters to them right now. Then comes the part most people miss. Listen to how they explain their answer. Suppose you ask a friend what they want from a new job. They say they want more money. Fair enough. But then they keep talking and say they are tired of being treated like they do not matter. Now the money may not be the deepest issue. Respect may be the real issue. The extra money may simply represent proof that they are valued. That is a very different picture. This is where you start reading people more accurately. Do not rush to judge the first answer. Let the person explain it. Their explanation often tells you more than the answer itself. You may even notice that some people struggle to answer. They may laugh. They may say they do not know. They may give you a very broad answer and then change the subject. That does not prove they are lying. It may simply mean they have never asked themselves the question. There is an important lesson here. People can spend years chasing things they never stopped to define. A person may say they want success when what they really want is approval. They may say they want a relationship when what they really want is security. They may say they want freedom when what they really want is an escape from pressure. The words are not always the whole story. The reason behind the words matters. There is also a useful trick you can use without making the conversation feel like an interview. After they answer, simply ask, "Why is that important to you?" Then listen. Do not interrupt. Do not rush to give advice. Do not prepare your next sentence while they are speaking. Let the silence do some work. People often reveal more after a short pause because they realize the first answer did not fully explain what they meant. And this is where you may notice something funny. Some people can talk for 10 minutes about what they want, but the moment you ask why, suddenly their brain behaves like an old computer trying to open 20 tabs at once. They pause, they laugh, they look away, they start again. That moment can be useful because it shows you the question reached a deeper level. Again, do not treat one reaction as proof of anything. You are looking for patterns, not magic signs. If a person says they want respect, then repeatedly talks about how others should admire them, you have more information. If they say they want peace but keep creating conflict, that contradiction is worth noticing. If they say they want honesty but become upset whenever anyone gives honest feedback, that tells you something too. The goal is not to catch them. The goal is to understand them. This is a huge shift. When you stop listening only for facts and start listening for needs, you become much better at understanding why people behave the way they do. You also become less likely to take everything personally. A person who snaps at you may not always be angry with you. They may be protecting pride, fear, stress, or a need to feel respected. That does not excuse bad behavior. It simply gives you a clearer picture of what may be driving it. So remember the question, what do you really want from this situation? Ask it naturally. Ask it when it fits the conversation. Then pay attention to the answer, the reason behind it, and the way the person feels while explaining it. You are not reading their mind. You are learning how to listen beyond the surface. And once you start doing that, you will notice something even more powerful. What people choose when they cannot have everything often reveals even more than what they say they want. There are moments when a person tells you exactly who they are without realizing they are doing it. It usually happens when two things they care about are placed on opposite sides of the table. Think about a person you trusted deeply who later disappointed you. Maybe you thought you knew them. You knew their favorite things. You knew their stories. You knew what they said about loyalty, friendship, love, money, and success. Then one day, a real choice came along, and their decision surprised you. That moment can hurt, because choices often speak louder than descriptions. This brings us to point 2. Ask a person what they would choose when two things they value cannot both survive. You can make the question simple. If you had to choose between being respected and being liked, which would you choose? Or ask, if you had to choose between keeping the peace and telling the truth, which matters more to you? There is no perfect answer. That is the point. You are not testing whether they are good or bad. You are learning what they place first when they cannot have everything at once. Listen carefully after you ask. The answer matters, but the reason matters even more. A person may say they would choose honesty because they cannot stand pretending. Another may choose peace because they have seen what constant conflict can do to people. Someone else may choose respect because they spent years feeling ignored. Another person may choose love because they fear losing the people close to them. Each answer gives you a small piece of their inner map. And here is something you should never forget. People often tell you what they value through their words, but pressure reveals what they value through their choices. That does not mean every choice defines a person forever. People grow, people make mistakes. People act differently when they are tired, scared, or under pressure. So do not take one answer and build an entire personality around it. Instead, look for a pattern. Ask another question later. Notice whether their actions match what they claim to value. That is where your understanding becomes stronger. You may discover that a person says family is everything, but when a choice requires sacrifice, they always choose convenience. You may discover that another person talks constantly about success, but when success requires giving up comfort, they choose comfort every time. Neither observation gives you permission to judge them. It gives you information. This skill can also protect you from being impressed by words alone. Imagine meeting a person who tells you they are extremely loyal. That sounds good. But instead of accepting the label, ask what loyalty means to them. Then ask what they would do if a close friend did something wrong. Would they defend the friend no matter what? Or would they tell the truth even if it caused conflict? Their answer may show you what loyalty means in their mind. That is far more useful than simply hearing the word loyal. You can use the same idea with trust. Ask whether they would rather know an uncomfortable truth or stay happy without knowing it. You can use it with money. Ask whether they would rather earn more and have less free time or earn less and have more control over their day. You can use it with relationships. Ask whether they would rather be with a person who deeply understands them but challenges them often, or a person who makes them comfortable but does not really understand them. These questions do something powerful. They make a person reveal their priorities without you asking for private secrets. You are simply asking them to choose. Now watch the reaction. Some people answer immediately. Others need time. Some will laugh because the question feels uncomfortable. Some will say it depends. That answer can be useful too. Ask what it depends on. You may learn that they do not think in simple terms. You may learn that they care about context. You may learn that they are afraid of making the wrong choice. Again, do not turn every pause into a dramatic mystery. A pause is just a pause, but repeated patterns can tell you a lot. The deeper lesson is that you should stop trying so hard to understand people through the labels they give themselves. Instead, learn to understand their priorities. A label tells you how a person wants to be seen. A choice tells you what they are willing to protect when things become difficult. That difference can save you from many false assumptions. It can help you choose better friends. It can help you understand your partner. It can help you communicate with family. It can even help you understand yourself. Because once you start asking these questions, you may notice your own answers changing. You may realize that what you thought mattered most is not what you actually protect when pressure arrives. And that brings us to a deeper question. If you really want to understand another person, you have to learn how they see the person they are when nobody else is there to applaud them. This is where the conversation can become much more revealing. Not because you are trying to expose anybody, but because there is a huge difference between the person we show the world and the person we believe we are in private. Point 3 is to ask a question that reaches that private picture. Ask, what do you think about yourself when nobody is watching? You can make it softer depending on the situation. You might ask, what is something you believe about yourself that other people may not notice? This question can create a completely different kind of conversation. Suddenly, you are not talking about favorite movies or weekend plans. You are talking about identity. And this is one of the biggest reasons you clicked on this video in the first place. You wanted to know how to understand people better. Here is the part that can change the way you listen forever. People do not only carry facts about themselves, they carry stories about themselves. Those stories affect how they react to praise, criticism, rejection, success, and even kindness. A person who secretly believes they are not good enough may struggle to accept praise. A person who believes they must always be strong may laugh when they are hurting. A person who believes they are special may become angry when they are ignored. A person who thinks they are always the problem may apologize, even when they did nothing wrong. Once you understand the story, many behaviors that looked random begin to make more sense. Ask the question naturally. Do not stare at them like you are waiting for a confession. You are having a conversation, not filming a detective show in a dark room. Let them think. The first answer may be simple. They might say they are proud of themselves. Great. Ask what they are most proud of. They might say they are hard-working. Ask what taught them to become that way. Now you are moving from a label to a story. That story is what matters. Maybe they had to grow up fast. Maybe they were often overlooked. Maybe they had to prove themselves. Maybe they learned that being useful was the easiest way to feel valued. Suddenly their behavior makes more sense. You may also notice the opposite. A person may say they are confident, but their entire answer may revolve around needing other people to approve of them. That does not automatically mean they are fake. Confidence and insecurity can exist in the same person. People are complex. That is why this skill is so valuable. It stops you from putting people into simple boxes. You start seeing the layers. You also begin to understand why certain comments affect certain people so strongly. If you know that a person secretly worries about being ignored, then you will understand why being left out hurts them more than you expected. If you know that a person has built their identity around being successful, you will understand why failure feels deeply personal to them. If you know that a person believes they are difficult to love, you may understand why they push people away when relationships become serious. The question is simple, but the answer can open a door. And here is the exciting part. You do not need to ask it every time you meet somebody. In fact, you should not. Use it when the conversation has enough trust for it. If you force a deep question into a shallow conversation, it can feel strange. Timing matters. Trust matters. Tone matters. Your goal is not to make people uncomfortable. Your goal is to create space where honest answers can appear. You should also remember that a person's private self-view is not always accurate. A person can believe something about themselves that is completely wrong. They may think they are unlovable when they are deeply loved. They may think they are weak when they have survived more than they realize. They may think they are selfish because they once made a mistake. So when you listen, do not simply accept every statement as fact. Listen for the belief behind it. That belief may explain their behavior, even if the belief itself is not true. This is where you gain a major advantage in human relationships. Instead of asking, "Why are they acting like this?" you start asking, "What story about themselves might make this behavior feel normal to them?" That question creates empathy without requiring you to excuse bad behavior. You can understand a person and still set boundaries. You can see their pain and still refuse to be treated badly. You can know their fears without becoming responsible for fixing them. That is mature understanding. And there is one more thing you should watch closely. When you ask a person about their private self, notice whether they can talk about themselves without turning the entire answer into what other people think. A person who constantly defines themselves through praise may depend heavily on approval. A person who speaks only about their failures may carry a harsh inner voice. A person who can speak about both strengths and weaknesses may have a more balanced view of themselves. None of these are perfect tests. They are clues. And clues become powerful when you stop looking at them alone and start seeing patterns. You are not reading minds. You are learning to hear the story behind the sentence. Once you can do that, another skill becomes incredibly important. Sometimes the biggest clue is not what a person says about themselves. It is what happens when you gently tell them what you notice. One of the most powerful things you can do in a conversation is something that sounds almost too simple. Tell the person what you notice, then give them room to correct you. Point 4 is about using a gentle observation instead of acting like you already know everything. You might say, "It sounds like this situation matters to you more than you first let on." Then stop. Do not rush to prove your point. Let them respond. This is a massive lesson because many people think understanding another person means showing them how much you know. It does not. Real understanding often means giving the other person enough space to tell you where you are wrong. Think about the people you have trusted. There may have been a time when you wanted somebody to understand what you were going through, but instead they jumped in with a solution. You were still explaining the problem, and they were already writing the ending. That can feel lonely. The same thing happens when we try to read people. We notice one behavior and immediately create a story. They are jealous, they are angry, they are selfish, they are afraid. They do not care. Maybe, but maybe not. The mature move is to test your assumption gently. Say what you notice and allow the person to respond. Their response can tell you a great deal. If they calmly say, "No, that is not really it," and then explain why, you have learned something useful. If they say, "Actually, you are right, I just did not know how to say it," you have learned something else. If they suddenly become very defensive, That may mean the topic is sensitive, but it does not prove guilt. If they laugh and change the subject, they may feel uncomfortable, or they may simply not want to discuss it. The key is not to turn one reaction into a verdict. The real skill is watching what happens across the whole conversation. This is where you must be careful, because there is a dark side to trying to read people. If you start believing every nervous movement is a lie, every pause is guilt, and every change in tone is proof of a secret, you will stop understanding people and start inventing stories about them. That can destroy trust very quickly. A tired person may avoid eye contact. A nervous person may speak too fast. A shy person may give short answers. None of those things automatically reveal deception. Context matters. Patterns matter. Their normal behavior matters. Your goal is not to become suspicious. Your goal is to become accurate. That is why giving people a chance to correct you is so powerful. It protects you from your own assumptions. It also makes people more willing to talk to you because they do not feel trapped. When a person knows they can say, "That is not what I mean," they feel safer. And when people feel safe, they often explain themselves more clearly. This creates a strange but beautiful result. The less you try to force the answer, the more information you may receive. You do not have to corner anyone. You do not need clever tricks. You do not need to pretend you have special powers. You simply need to listen and leave room for truth. There is also a powerful way to use this when a person seems upset. Instead of saying, "I know exactly why you are angry," try saying, "It seems like something about this really bothered you. Am I reading that right?" That small change can completely alter the conversation. The first version tells them what they feel. The second version invites them to explain it. One can create resistance, the other creates space, and that space is where you learn. You may discover that the anger is not about the thing you thought it was. Maybe they felt ignored. Maybe they felt embarrassed. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they misunderstood what happened. Maybe you were actually the one who made the wrong assumption. That last possibility is important. If you want to become good at understanding people, you must be comfortable being wrong. That may be the hardest part. Your ego wants to be right. Your ego wants to say, "I knew it." But understanding people is not about winning. It is about seeing clearly. Sometimes the best thing you can say is, "I may be wrong, but this is what I noticed. What am I missing?" That question can unlock more honesty than a dozen clever tricks. It tells the other person that you are not there to judge them. You are there to understand. And when you consistently communicate that way, people begin to show you more of who they are. Not because you manipulated them, but because they feel respected. This is the lesson you should never take for granted. The person who tries hardest to prove that they can read everyone may understand people less than the person who stays curious. Curiosity leaves room for truth. Assumptions leave room only for your own story. So listen closely to what happens when you give people the freedom to correct you. Their answer may change your view of them. It may even change your view of yourself. And once you understand that gap between how people see themselves and how they believe others see them, there is one final question that can take you even deeper. Before this video ends, take a moment and think about the people around you. Think about the friend who always seems strong. Think about the person who jokes all the time. Think about the quiet person who rarely complains. Think about the person who always wants to help. Now ask yourself a simple question. How much of what you believe about them came from who they really are, and how much came from the role you have seen them play? This brings us to point 5, and it may be the most revealing question of all. Ask, what do people usually get wrong about you? Then listen carefully. This question does something special because it asks the person to show you the gap between their real identity and the way they feel others see them. A person might say, "People think I do not care, but I actually care too much." Another might say, "People think I am confident, but I worry about everything." Someone else may say, "People think I am quiet because I have nothing to say, but I just do not like speaking unless I have something useful to add." Another person may say, "People think I am lucky, but they do not know how hard I worked for what I have." Now notice what is happening. The answer is not only describing what other people misunderstand, it is telling you what this person wishes you understood. That is powerful. People often spend years being misunderstood in small ways. The funny person may wish people knew when they are hurting. The strong person may wish somebody would ask if they are okay. The independent person may secretly want support, but hate asking for it. The successful person may worry that people only value what they can provide. The person who always says they are fine may have learned that explaining their feelings never helped before. When you ask this question, you are giving them a chance to rewrite the picture. And that can create a very deep connection. But there is something important you need to understand. Do not use the answer as a weapon later. If a person tells you their deepest insecurity, do not bring it up during an argument just because you know it will hurt. That is not understanding. That is betrayal. The whole purpose of learning how people work is to communicate better, protect your peace, and build stronger relationships. Knowledge without respect can become cruelty, so listen with care. If a person says people think they are cold, but they are actually sensitive, do not laugh at them. You may have just learned why they respond the way they do. If they say people think they are arrogant, but they are really shy, you may suddenly understand why they do not speak much in groups. If they say people think they are difficult because they have strong standards, you can ask what those standards are. Now you are having a real conversation instead of guessing. This question also gives you a chance to reflect on your own life. What do people get wrong about you? Maybe they think you are okay because you keep moving. Maybe they think you are confident because you speak clearly. Maybe they think you do not need anybody because you are used to handling things alone. Maybe they think you are distant when you are simply careful about who you trust. Whatever your answer is, there is something worth learning from it. The way other people see you is not always the way you experience yourself, and the same is true for every person you meet. This should change the way you judge people. The person you call rude may be overwhelmed. The person you call quiet may be thoughtful. The person you call arrogant may be insecure. The person you call needy may be afraid of losing people. Again, this does not mean you should excuse harmful behavior. Understanding is not the same as approval. You can understand why a person behaves badly and still decide that you do not want that behavior near you. But when you understand the reason, your decision becomes clearer. You stop reacting only to the surface. You start making choices based on the whole picture. That is the real power behind everything you learned today. The goal was never to become a human lie detector. The goal was never to manipulate people or make them feel exposed. The goal was to become the kind of person who listens so well that people reveal themselves naturally. Ask what they really want and listen for the reason underneath the answer. Ask what they would choose when two important things cannot both survive, and watch what their priorities reveal. Ask what they believe about themselves when nobody is watching, and listen for the story they carry inside. Give them room to correct your observations, because being willing to be wrong makes your understanding stronger. Then ask what people usually get wrong about them, because the gap between public image and private identity can tell you more than a polished introduction ever could. Use these questions with patience. Use them with respect. And most of all, use them on yourself too. Because the better you understand your own motives, fears, values, and stories, the better you become at understanding the people around you. You may start noticing that conversations feel different. You may hear the reason behind the answer. You may notice when a person lights up while talking about something they value. You may notice when a topic makes them pull back. You may notice when their words and choices do not match. And instead of jumping to a conclusion, you will know to stay curious. That is a skill worth keeping for the rest of your life. The most powerful thing you can take from this video is that people are rarely as simple as their first impression makes them seem. You learned how to ask what a person really wants and listen for the reason behind it. You learned how choices can reveal priorities more clearly than labels. You learned how a person's private view of themselves can shape the way they react. You learned why giving people room to correct you is better than pretending you already know everything. And you learned how asking what people get wrong about them can reveal the gap between the image they show and the person they feel they are inside. Now you have a choice. You can go back to judging people by quick answers, facial expressions, and first impressions, or you can start listening at a deeper level. Going back to the old way would mean giving up a skill that can make your friendships stronger, your relationships clearer, and your decisions wiser. Do not make understanding people harder than it needs to be. Stay curious. Listen closely. Ask better questions. Let people explain themselves. And remember that the best way to understand another mind is not to force it open. It is to create enough trust for the person to open it themselves. The video appearing on your screen next is there because the algorithm already knows what kind of insight may help you most after this. Click it now and keep going, because the next lesson may change what you notice about people even more.